There's a couple of interesting things. Let's move towards the article then. So we're we're basing our discussion today on the article, which is The Dilemma of Rescue and Revolt by Asher Cohen, who was spoken about before. And he's talking about, in this article, he's talking about some people who chose to resist with force, so they chose an armed revolt, and then people like David Gurr. This was a non-violent resistance movement, and the logo of our project is that stamp, because they would manufacture these stamps, and the last thing that needed to be done on a counterfeit document would be that stamping of the document. So for us, that stamp is the symbol, the best symbol of non-violent resistance, and using what's in between your ears instead of using your fists or a weapon to try and affect change. So in the article, at first, Asher Cohen, and I want to spend some time on how the article starts, because it starts with people who did choose armed resistance. And Abba Kovner is a very famous figure in the history of the Holocaust, and he was a Polish Jew, and he lived in Vilno, which is modern day Vilna in Lithuania. And at that time it was a part of Poland, and it fell because the first country that the Nazis invaded in the context of World War II was Poland. It became a part of Germany, but first it was part of the Soviet Union because of the pact that Ribbentrop and Molotov had signed, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So it was in the Soviet area of occupation, but then as Nazi Germany then invaded the Soviet Union in the summer of 1941, Vilna became one of the first sites of the Holocaust, because the Nazis and the Einsatz group and local collaborators started murdering Jews en masse. And there's one particular place that I think you mentioned that you went to quite recently, the Ponari Forest.
I was there, not recently, but I was there. I went. I was participating at the summer university, but this was like more than 15 years ago, and in Druskininkai, which is close to Vilna, and then. Because my mom in Budapest, she at the time she was the president of B'nai Brit, which is a great Jewish organization. She put me in contact with the president of B'nai Brit in Vilna, and he took me there, and it was quite a shocking sight, because there was nothing. There was nothing. He told me what was there. And then there was a little plane, a little memorial in the forest. So
what happened?
It was very sad to see. A mass murder.
So what?
If you cut this out, we can look it up. What exactly happened?
So they were well en masse. I think the number in this small forest clearing, by the end of, I think, about 40,000 at least, Jews were murdered just in this forest by being shot to death. And Abba Kovner, he knew about what had happened in Ponari, and that spurred him on to write a manifesto. And there's some very famous lines from this manifesto, and essentially he's urging, he's a member of the United Partisan Organization, and he believes that Jewish people should fight as Jews against what's happening to them. And he writes a manifesto in 1941, and it's interesting because it's one of the first signs that Jewish people knew that Hitler and the Nazis and their collaborators were aiming to murder the Jewish population of Europe en masse. And he says in this manifesto, Hitler aims to destroy all the Jews of Europe. And then that really famous line, let us not go like sheep to the slaughter. Resistance is the only reply to the enemy. So he believed that rescue was untenable and that what was needed was an armed revolt against what was happening to the Jews in modern day Lithuania, but which was then Poland.
And what's very interesting about this, that after the Holocaust, all the armed resistant movements, they were very much acknowledged and then recognized, and they are still in the common knowledge very, very much, and the non-armed resistance is not. So this is what is the reasoning of David Gur himself, that the ethos is not in the is not for the liking of the common knowledge. So this is the Jews were not using weapons, and that's why it's nothing what they did.
That's really interesting. And the figure of Abba Kovner, because you live in Israel, so you know how people in Israel view the legacy of Abba Kovner. How is he thought upon in Israel? What do people think about Abba Kovner?
So Abba Kovner is, I think, as a person who made Aliyah, and I am in Israel, and I know Abba Kovner also from this, that he was a resistant in the Second World War, in the Soviet occupation zone. But how that he wrote the manifesto and the Vilna Ghetto and all this, what you said, but there's so many of these heroes here, that what makes him to be outstanding is not only his look and his beautiful hair, but on the pictures what I saw, of course, but his legacy in Beit HaTfutzot. Beit HaTfutzot is a museum which used to be called the Diaspora Museum, and Beit HaTfutzot in Hebrew. Now it's called the Anu Museum of the Jewish People. So he was the one who founded this museum, and according to his thoughts, that the old core exhibition was set up. Now it's a totally different exhibition, a new exhibition, which is also very good. But the Diaspora Museum was visited by every Jew when they came to Israel. So it was a very, very important museum, and hopefully it is still, and you can remember Kovner there a lot.
So he's a hero. He's seen as a hero in Israel.
Yeah. I whoever knows him, because I'm not sure that people would know him so well. The history teaching is not the strength of Israel, but because he was in Israel, maybe it is, because Israeli history is taught well in Israel.
Yeah, he had a really interesting post-war life. So after one really interesting thing, I don't think it's mentioned in the text, but I just want to talk about it, is straight after the war he forms a group called Nakam, which means revenge, or also known as Dam Israel Noter, the blood of Israel avenges. And they had a couple of plans, and they wanted to reap revenge on the German population, and specifically the SS, and they wanted to kill a large number of German citizens, millions. I think I think I've heard the number was 6 million. So they wanted to make up for the Holocaust in terms of German citizens.
Yeah.
And he went to
Yeah, and he was
Israel to try
considered
and
to be a fascist or propaganda person. Yeah,
he went to Israel to acquire some
because of this.
poison. And he was going to poison the
Mhm.
water supplies of Hamburg, Frankfurt, Munich, and Nuremberg. And he was caught on his way back with this poison, I believe, and incarcerated. And another plan was to kill SS prisoners in Allied occupied prisoner of war camps. And one thing that they did do, it says in April 1946, in an internment camp near Nuremberg called Langwasser, they Nakam coated many loaves of bread with arsenic, and 2,200 German prisoners fell ill, and 207 were hospitalized, but no deaths were reported. So it's just, I think there's a lot of, and this is probably for another podcast, but there's a lot of interesting things to say about revenge, the nature of
Yeah, and he also testified
revenge.
against Eichmann in the Eichmann trial in Israel.
He did, yes. Yeah, that was the other thing. And then, so Asher Cohen then moves on to probably the most famous instance of armed revolt during the Holocaust, which is the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising happened in 1943. So in July of 1942, the Warsaw Ghetto, to its peak, housed around nearly 500,000 Jews, was squashed into a really depraved and deprived area of Warsaw. And then when Treblinka opens, which is the apex camp of a murder operation called Operation Reinhardt, when Treblinka, which is an a pure extermination centre, apart from about 1,000 people, maybe a bit less, that they would keep to operate the gas chambers and do other jobs around the extermination centre. When that becomes operational in July 1942, the Nazis start to empty the Warsaw Ghetto into Treblinka, and they murder, by the end of 1942, I think somewhere in the region of 270,000 people have been murdered in Treblinka. So by January 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto, the news has got to the Warsaw Ghetto about what's happening, and they're organising their own resistance movements called the ZOB, so a Jewish youth organisation, to resist deportation. And in January, when the Nazis are deporting some Jews, they come into some resistance, and then in retaliation for that, the Nazis murder 1,000 people in the Warsaw Ghetto as retaliation. And then the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising happens in April 19th, and it lasts for about a month. So the armed resistors in the Warsaw Ghetto are able to hold the Nazis off for around a month, which is quite astonishing. An armed revolt against the might of Nazism, and you're in a ghetto. You've been deprived of food and sanitary conditions, and you're able to acquire arms and fight the Nazis for a month. Like, some countries weren't able to fight the Nazis for a month, so it's quite astonishing. And this is April the 19th in Israel is Holocaust Memorial Day, I believe, in Israel, April the 19th.
So it's not April the 19th, but it's according to the Hebrew calendar.
It is related to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, though, isn't it? The Israeli Holocaust Memorial Day.
Yeah. So the Israeli Holocaust it's the World Holocaust Memorial Day. Let me see
in the UK, Holocaust Memorial Day is the 27th of January, when the Soviets arrived in Auschwitz.
So the 27th of January is a different thing. The 27th of January is the first, no, yeah, 27th of that. It's the Europe, not European. Let me see. Yeah.
So whilst you're looking that up, I just want
Right, it's
to.
so long time ago. It's the Holocaust Remembrance Day. Auschwitz, we're gonna still have several. Wait. The UN. It's the UN Holocaust Memorial Day, the January 21st, 27th, and the Yom HaShoah, which is the Holocaust Day, Holocaust Memorial Day all over the world, is this one, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and it's the April 19th, but it's
April 19th.
yeah, in
So that's
2023 it was 18th of April. Next year it's gonna be
yeah.
May 6th, and then it's
It's
moving because
interesting that
it's
they would.
the Hebrew calendar.
It shows how important to people this armed resistance was. That they would have the Holocaust Memorial Day. They want to associate that with Jews fighting rather than being victimized. And there's the uprising came to an end. There
Nissan
was
27th. Yeah, that's the Hebrew
there
date.
was
Sorry, I was just looking for it. Hmm,
there was a
sorry.
general called
Nissan
Jürgen
27th. Yeah,
Stroop.
it was very important. Once I wrote one of my essays was about this in the university. Why this day is the Holocaust Memorial Day, and actually there is a very good Wikipedia article about it, and it's called Yom HaShoah, and then it also has that why it's called Yom HaShoah, what are the origins of it, why the Knesset and when they instituted this day in 51, and why it became the Holocaust Remembrance Day. And also the picture in Wikipedia is important because the March of the Living is on it in 2014, and actually
Yeah.
Lau is there, who is the chief rabbi of Israel and one of the founders of March of the Living. He's holding the Torah there. Sorry for the interruption. It's
No,
just,
that's
it's
important.
just a recommendation.
Yeah, and so the uprising came to an end, and it was the end was signified for the Germans by blowing up the Great Synagogue in Warsaw, and the person who led the suppression of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was a general called Jürgen Stroop, and one of the most amazing and incredible documents about the Holocaust is something called the Stroop Report. So those astonishing pictures that we see of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. There was 69 photographs taken for the Stroop Report. We think that this Stroop Report was made by Jürgen Stroop and his men to give to Heinrich Himmler as to evidence what the suppression of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And I've got a couple of quotes by Jürgen Stroop, and I think I might choose one for my 3 quotes later, but I want to read one here. So Jürgen Stroop says, so this is during the uprising, and he says, May the 1st was memorable for a number of reasons. I witnessed an extraordinary scene that day. A group of prisoners, so this is Jürgen Stroop saying this, a group of prisoners had been herded into the square. In spite of their exhaustion, many of them held their heads high. I stood nearby, surrounded by my escort. Suddenly, I heard shots. A young Jew in his mid-20s, I'd guess, was firing a pistol at one of our police officers. 1, 2, 3, fast as lightning. One of the bullets hit the officer's hand. My men sprayed the Jew with fire. I managed to whip out my own pistol and hit him as he fell. As he lay dying, I stood over him, watching his life ebb away. So it's just that this guy was a horrendous perpetrator, and he was I think he was executed after the war for what he'd done. But he's a really good example of just how many Holocaust perpetrators there are, because I can imagine not many people know the name Jürgen Stroop, but obviously he was a horrendous human being. Now.